Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you. This is a new presentation from www.central-mosque.com and from the Humble Heart YouTube channel. It is the 12th episode in the Making Sense series. The title today is The French Connection, Blood on the Streets of Pakistan, Part 2. Because it is a continuation, I urge you to watch Part 1, which is Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, TLP, Blood on the Streets of Pakistan, Part 1, because we are going to discuss these issues sequentially. So you need to know what I said in Part 1 for Part 2 to make a lot more sense to you, inshallah. The video is in the description of this one. So since my last video, things have moved on and the government of Imran Khan has developed a little bit more sense. They tried to crush this movement, which isn't a terrorist or extremist movement up to this point. However, somebody's knocked some sense into them. There is a bill in the Pakistani parliament to expel the French prime minister. There are debates and discussions going on. TLP remains banned, but their negotiations continue. So we hope, inshallah, and we make dua to the, and in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this holy month of Ramadan, that things will continue in the right directions and negotiations and discussions, and this can be settled around the table. If you recall from part 1, what I said is that TLP and the present Imran Khan government agreed in 16th of November 2020 on 4 points. Number 1, expel the French ambassador from Pakistan after introducing a bill in the parliament. Pakistan to recall its ambassador. Pakistan to boycott French products on a state level. And all of the TLP members which were arrested in protests and stuff to be released without charge. The deadline was 12th of April. The PTI Imran Khan government simply sat there and did absolutely nothing. Why? This is what we want to talk about today in this part 2. Before I do that, let me tell you that foreign relations work on the principle of reciprocity. So basically what happens is if you increase your diplomatic presence and staff and overtures in a country, then the other country does the same in your country. If you decrease your diplomatic presence, expel people, then the other country does exactly the same thing. So you know from recent examples in the media within the past year, America expels Russian diplomats, Russia expels American diplomats. America shuts down a few Chinese consulates, China shuts down American consulates. That's the way it works. The visa arrangements work the same thing. If a country provides visa-free entry to a citizen of another country, the other country reciprocates by doing the same thing. So, when it comes to Pakistan, is Pakistan reliant on France on any high-level technology or anything like that? The answer to that is clearly no. Pakistan is a nuclear nation, and as a nuclear nation, it has to maintain a triad. A triad means ability to launch nuclear weapons by land, air, or sea. So, the Pakistani Air Force has these 50-year-old pickup trucks, this is what they call pickup trucks, because what they do is they load them with bombs and SAUs, standoff weapons. And these are French Mirages that Pakistan has been operating for the last 50 years. Pakistan has full technical capability to overhaul the engines and airframes and avionics systems on this plane and is not reliant on France for anything whatsoever. Completely independent, job done. They are one of the planes that carry the Rad nuclear missile and no problems with that. These are drop tanks, not missiles, by the way. But anyway, Pakistan has no reliance on France for that. In the 1990s, Pakistan bought the French Augusta 90B submarines. They needed an upgrade recently, and the French government wanted Pakistan to come to them for an upgrade. Instead, the Pakistani local industry, along with the Turkish, upgraded the propulsion system and the guidance system and the radars and on this nuclear submarines of Pakistan. So once again, the French were not happy about it, but Pakistan is in no need for even its own submarines. Thirdly, the previous government did a deal about these EC-725 Caracal helicopters. This was one of the biggest defense deal Pakistan signed with France. It was worth 1.5 billion US dollars. Imran Khan government and certain defense experts within Pakistan realized that this deal was based on corruption of the previous government and they wanted to cancel it because these helicopters don't really bring any offensive punch to the Pakistan Navy. They wanted to cancel it. They couldn't. But because of these demonstrations of TLP, Pakistan cancelled these contracts because they can easily get these from the Italians, which Pakistan have a contract with, or the Chinese. Defense deal cancelled. The only last defense deal that Pakistan has was and had already paid for was with these transport helicopters H-125. Pakistan is now involved with Turkey, as you well know, about helicopter development. So within a few years, these are transport helicopters. They're not very sophisticated for the Army Air Corps of Pakistan, and it is basically nothing. So Pakistan has no strategic defense relationship. In the past, in the 1970s, the French wanted to aid Pakistan, particularly around 1974, in the nuclear power plant for generating power. Pakistan invested millions at that time into that power plant. French backed out, and it was mothballed for about 2 years. But Pakistani engineers at that time revived that nuclear power plant, and it's been generating electricity absolutely fine, recently been upgraded, so no problems there either. So Pakistan has no reliance on French technology or expertise, whether it be in defense or the nuclear area whatsoever. So as a result of that, because Pakistan has really no technical dependencies on France, there is no Pakistani ambassador in France at all. So Pakistan, the tenure of the Pakistani ambassador, Mr. Moinul Haq, expired in 2020, and Pakistan did not appoint a new ambassador to France at all. So Imran Khan government knew that one of the clauses of what they agreed with needed no action because there's no ambassador. So as I told you, as a principle of reciprocity, what should France do? Not appoint an ambassador, because there's not a lot happening between France and Pakistan anyway. So Imran Khan government did nothing because they thought we have no ambassador, so France is not going to appoint an ambassador, and the tenure of the French ambassador had also ended. What did France do? The exact opposite, to stoke trouble. What France did on December 10th, 2020, after the agreement was well known that this party is asking for French ambassador to be expelled, France decides to extend the role of its ambassador to Pakistan, Dr. Mark Barati, for no reason whatsoever. And by the way, it is what's been leaked in the Pakistani media is Mr. Mark Barati and his family was not expecting to stay in Pakistan. They had all their stuff packed in and shipped and stuff, and they were not expecting to stay in Pakistan. But at the last minute, the French government, to stoke trouble in Pakistan because they knew this issue was boiling over, and the Pakistani people were against the French state, they decided to extend their ambassador just to stoke that. Then what happens is, a few weeks ago, as you know, the French issued an advisory to French citizens to leave Pakistan. Usually when things like that happen, if you recall, late last year, early this year, when France and Turkey had its spat, the first thing the French did is recall their ambassador from Turkey back into France for negotiations and consultations. That is exactly what happens. France has not done that. The Pakistani people are asking for the French ambassador to be expelled, and France is doing the exact opposite. In many countries in Africa, whenever there was a problem with France, even a terrorist attack, the first thing the French government does is recall its ambassador for consultations. In case of Pakistan, they are keeping their ambassador in Pakistan to continue to stoke trouble and to incite passions of the people in Pakistan. Second thing that they're doing is there's an organization called FATF, and what they do is they look at a country's financial systems, its regulations, and if a country is not doing enough about money laundering and stuff like that, they put the country on blacklist, or if it's borderline, they place the country on a gray list. So Pakistan was placed on the gray list in June 2018, and since then there have been several discussions about moving Pakistan out of the gray list, and they have not been successful, although Pakistan has made progress on most of those parts and strengthened their financial systems and regulations. France has been consistently against that and continue to vote in the past against Pakistan, and in fact, actually, they said to even put Pakistan on the blacklist, banning them. One of the things about requirements of FATF is to look at terrorism and religious extremism in Pakistan. What French are doing is, by keeping their ambassador within Pakistan, they're stoking people's passions, and they're hoping that in June or July, when the next session of FATF occurs, FATF will either continue to keep Pakistan on the grey list, which causes problems for the economy, the trade with certain countries, the trade deals have to be negotiated differently, or even escalate and place Pakistan on the blacklist. So if you notice the actions of the French and their government in the past few decades, they continue to incite the passions and emotions of Muslims worldwide, and they also do that at a state level against Muslim countries. They do that with Turkey, they do that with other African Muslim nations, and now they're doing it with Pakistan, deliberately provoking by keeping their ambassador, by stoking an already volatile situation. So I ask you during the month of Ramadan to make dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease this blip and suffering for the people of Pakistan, and for Allah to guide the French and stop them meddling in the affairs of the Muslim Ummah at a general level and in the internal affairs of Muslim nations specifically. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.